Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome for this debate. The way it's going to happen is very simple. We're going to share with you the views of the House, and you're going to vote at the very beginning before hearing two sides arguing for and against the motion. We don't expect careless whispers here, nor do we expect rage. We hope to have a very constructive debate. And to start with, let me share with you what the motion says. This House believes that there should be no religion in school. You have your little clickers. Look at the screen. Click 1 if you agree, and 2 if you would disagree. Time to vote. Thank you very much. We will be sharing the results of that vote at the end of the session. My name is Olivier Houllier. I'm a brain scientist. One could wonder why a brain scientist should moderate a panel on religion in school. I too wonder that, but I found the answer. The answer is that whomever framed that session made the session and the opening statement something that is a negative sentence. This House believes that there should be no religion in school, which makes those who are going to argue for the motion the people that are against religion in schools. For, against. And the people who are going to be against the motion are the people who are going to be for religion in schools. Do you see the thing? So I guess this is why they needed the brain scientists in order to crack that one. This said, the opinions that are going to be shared here represent the individuals and not the institutions that they work with, starting with me. I'm not responsible for what I'm going to read or what the others are going to say. Now, let's start with our team on my right that is going to argue for, and it is my pleasure to introduce Naomi Volin. Naomi is a teacher. She's associated with the Paragon Tech NASA Jet Propulsion Lab, and I think she deserves also a round of applause because she's one of our top 10 finalists for the last year's Global Teacher Prize. Naomi, the floor is yours. It's the people who are hidden back there that we don't see who are responsible, not the guy here.
Okay. I don't believe in dinosaurs. So spoke a student of mine in my biology class when we were doing an evolution unit. I was teaching about vestigial organs, those like the appendix or the coccyx, and going on as evidence with DNA sequencing, and then the fossil record, and that was his response about dinosaurs. The question, of course, is the question of genesis. Where does life come from? Is there life in the universe? Is there life in the solar system? So what does this title mean, what we are debating about? The House believes there should be no religion in schools. Here, I contend that there's a distinct difference between religious literacy and the practices of religion in school. The practices of religion do not belong in public schools. These include prayer and holiday celebrations, among others. But back to the dinosaur denier. Other related concerns that creep into education are ones stated like, man did not land on the moon. Socrates was poisoned for his contention that the earth revolves around the sun, not the other way around. Now, the finalists for the Global Teacher Prize, we have become the Varkey Teacher Ambassadors, and really this has been a highlight of the Global Education and Skills Forum. These teachers are humanists. There was there were questions posed to us by the Harvard University Graduate School of Education. We had to answer thoughtfully a number of questions showing that these teachers, the best teachers in the world, echo that core values, those found in religions, can be embedded into the lesson without the practice of religion in schools. The characteristics that teachers taught and modeled to their students included confidence, persistence in the face of difficulties, inclusivity, responsibility, social interaction, thoughtfulness, empathy, tolerance, compassion, giving, kindness, sensitivity, and discussion. Creating a social climate in the classroom was, as one teacher said, quote, live the behaviors in every lesson. Here, the qualities I just said reflect, but do not follow the practices of many, many religions. Maslow's research of student needs before learning cited that they need to feel safe and belonging, and this can be done by teachers in the classroom and embodied in the student behavior for students of all backgrounds and faiths. I raised and educated my 3 children in the school district that I taught in, which was an extremely diverse city. It was diverse culturally, domestically, economically, religiously, and racially. They learned with students from all over the world, from all other faiths. I did not send my children to a nearby community, to a school where the student population was homogeneous. My children and I had conversations about this family decisions. They told me, in learning with a diversely populated school in their classes, they prepared them for life and work in a way that they wouldn't have been achieved with the same outcome if they had been in a homogeneous learning setting. The qualities I listed before are non-cognitive qualities that can be very important to parents. And parents do what's best for their own children, what reflects their values. Parents may choose parochial schools where religion is practiced and taught, as they feel their children need to practice as part of their faith, part of their life. And this is a decision based on what families may value. And it is a nod of recognition that religion won't be practiced in public schools. With that, there's a nod to the public or public education with so many beliefs, so much diversity, that it's important that students learn about our globally diverse religions as religious literacy. The Global Education and Skills Forum theme, and this is on your green booklet, collectively will make a difference to public education. To conclude, I favor that students can learn about religions through the humanities, history, and literacy. The practice of religion does not belong in public education. The dinosaurs silently affirm this belief.
Thank you very much. It is now time to hear the first member of the team that is against the motion, therefore for religion in schools. Please allow me to welcome Rolando Villamero. Rolando is the chairperson of a UN Secretary General Global Education, first initiative in youth advocacy group, and a major in education. Rolando, the floor is yours.
Dagang salamat, Naomi. That's thank you in my language, and I appreciate your intervention to this debate. I'm here together with my colleague, Lord Adonis, to express our strong disagreement to the motion of the House. For today, I will be talking about my personal experience being a young person who was exposed in a Catholic high school and a young person who was exposed in a Presbyterian university. And Lord Adonis will support my claim later on when he has the turn to speak. I am a big fan of a qualitative research, which means that I always value people's opinions, stories, and their experiences to move things forward. That is why I'm standing here in front of you as a young person to talk about my own direct personal experience about this motion. And I'd like to emphasize that I was born in the Philippines. It's a country of 7,107 islands. And 3 weeks ago, 400 islets have been added to the list, so we now have 7,507, just a small fact. And Philippines is a very Catholic country. You know, 80%, more than 80% of our population are Catholic. We have Protestants. And if you look at the slogan of the Philippine Constitution, it says, Makabayan, Makatao, Makadiyos, Makakalikasan. Makadiyos means for God. That means religion plays a very critical role in our identity as Filipinos. And this is one thing that we need to emphasize here. When we deal with this debate, contexts have to be considered. I know that Philippines can be an isolated country, but sometimes, or maybe some countries would share the same sentiment as the Philippines. So this is my story. I was born from a Christian Protestant family, but the twist is, I had to go to a Catholic high school for scholarship reasons. When I was about to graduate from high school, my parents had to stop going to this Protestant church. So when I went to college, I didn't have religion, but I had to go to a Presbyterian university. In other words, I was put in a situation where I went to schools that did not necessarily fit to my family's beliefs and my own faith. So this is the setup. When I was in high school, in a Catholic high school, every morning we would recite the prayer, Our Father who art in heaven. And then we had a weekly mass, and all students would attend. In a Presbyterian university, annually we have the so-called University Christian Life Emphasis Week, where all students were encouraged to participate and organize activities that are related to the religion, from debates, going to services, religious convocation, and all of these. But I'd like to emphasize, and this is the misconception when you talk about religious practices in school. When I was in this high school and this university, I wasn't required to do the prayer. I wasn't forced to attend masses. When I was in a Presbyterian university, I had the freedom to say no to attend a religious activity. And this is one thing that I'd like to emphasize with that. And one thing is, in the schools where I came from, teachers and the principals took the courage and gave me the opportunity to express my own faith in my own capacity and in my own experience. The question now is, I went to Catholic school, Presbyterian University, and I must say that I'm a person here standing in front of you who receive a very good impact in being in these schools where religion has been practiced. And I'd like to emphasize 3 very important impacts that religious practices in these schools have given me. One is the importance of experiential learning. Being in a school where religion is practiced, I got the opportunity to be immersed in a very specific faith. I learned about Catholic beliefs. I learned about Presbyterian beliefs. And this contributed to my holistic learning. When I went from these schools, I got a holistic view of what these religions are, and it contributed me to a more holistic and global citizen. When I travel the world and meet people of these faiths, Catholics or Protestants or Presbyterians, I have the opportunity to be more tolerant and accepting of what their beliefs are because of this experiential learning from these Catholic schools. Second thing, religious activities in these schools allowed me to learn collectively with my fellows. In a Presbyterian university where I was from, one of the activities we had to do was to organize programs about religion and our beliefs. And this encouraged students to convene, brainstorm ideas, and work together, understand each other, learn the concept and dynamics of teamwork. And this contributed and supplemented to our other activities in school. And finally, I'd like to emphasize that religious practices, especially in the country where I come from, have contributed to hope to people. You know, Philippines is a developing country. It's a country faced with a lot of adversities, from natural disasters every week, corruption, poverty. And I ask a lot of parents, what's the impact of practicing religion in schools? And a lot of them did say, this gives my child and the whole family the glimpse of hope that no matter what our situation is, we still have the capacity to hope for the best. When I was in high school, that was the most difficult time of my life because my father had a lot of issues. And it was in school that I felt belonging. And I'd like to address this debate, an argument to Naomi about the issue of belonging. It was through attending sessions with my Catholic students, listening to their stories, that somehow felt me that courage and helped me cope with my family problems from home. I'd like to conclude this argument by saying that I do believe in the fact that my experience as a young person is only one experience. And I would admit that this shouldn't be generalized to convince all of you to drop the motion of the house. But I'd like to emphasize, ladies and gentlemen, that every experience counts. Every experience is valid. Every person's experience should be given the opportunity to be heard, and that's what we call voice. I'd like to end by saying what a very popular qualitative researcher, Spradley, said, that as a society, we should understand the meaning of every person's experience, to walk in his or her shoes, to feel things as we feel them, to explain things as you explain them. This is essential in moving things forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and also thank you very much for saying 9 times that you're young, implying that we're not. We got the message. It is now time to hear our second member of a team that is for, therefore against. Let me introduce you Professor Yusri Marzouki from the University of Qatar. Professor Marzouki works in the field of cognitive science and has recently been heard by the French Parliament on issues related to religion and psychology. Professor Marzouki, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So here, for me, it's very funny to talk about not teaching religion, because I do teach religion in my cognitive psychology class, but to decipher the religious fact and to show to my students that it is just a mental state, and we have a lot of cognitive process underlying the religious mental state of mind. But just to show you that teaching religion has many levels, starting from the beginning and at the faculty level, it's different. Now, the psychology of religion is an empirical science, and it is a subfield of the psychology itself. But it has different aim and different objective. Why I'm highlighting this? Because recently we have an interesting book from James Griffith called Religious That Heals, Religious That Harms. And the book is actually, because he is actually a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, and he made this book to explain to practitioners and clinical psychologists the difficulty of dealing with therapy, generally speaking, when you have someone with a strong religious belief. And of course, as any cognitive psychologist, we have to look back to the past and see all the process from the beginning to this particular mental state of mind. Because, and what I gathered from this book, something very interesting, that religion is itself a moral dilemma. Why? If we look back to our history as a human race, but also as a species, we can notice that a greater good came from the religion, and at the same time we have a great suffering come from the religion. As we speak now, this fact still going on. And so the fact of talking about religion is already controversial, because we don't have the proof that is good, we don't have the proof that is evil. So how to deal with this question? Because the teacher with the young children and with this particular audience, it is very difficult. Why? Because we have also this another psychological issue called the personality of the teacher. When you teach hard science, when you teach mathematics or whatever other discipline, it is kind of canonical in a way. People can be following the textbook, but when you teach religion, it becomes more a subjective issue. So maybe you cannot get how can I say it? You cannot reject a student that is against, for example, the Vienna Circle's philosophy of thinking, but you may reject a student because he or she don't agree with their religious belief. And this is a true fact, because we showed in many studies that we have this gender bias, we have this ethnical group bias, and we have this religious thing bias. So the personality of the teacher will really, really impact the way the young children receive the religious method and the religious message in school. So what we have to do to face this problem, and that's why I don't believe that teaching religious in school is the good strategy. I'm not going to say we need to ban this or we need to reject this. I'm just not a good strategy. Why? Because we cannot control the personality of the teacher. We cannot control the belief system of the teacher. They have their own way to see how to teach religion, because this is already impacted by their own perception of religion itself. And that's why the personality issue of the teacher here is at play, because we have also showed in psychology something that we call the compliance to the power, the scientific power. I don't know if you already experienced it in your life, for example, talking with your kids, and they may come up with a wrong idea about something, or you notice that they are saying something wrong, and you try to correct them, and they reply by saying, no, my teacher said this or say this. Okay, and you feel that it's an awkward situation. You're not allowed to say, no, your teacher is wrong, because the teacher is perceived like this prophetic picture in their mind, and at the same time you would like to correct the wrong information, and you will insist, but they do persist and saying, no, my teacher is right. It's like, because it is not, we are not in the classroom situation, you are my father or my mom, and it's not the right place to do it. So you see, this format, the school format, is very powerful to yield this kind of message or in this kind of behavior. So that's why the compliance to the authority, which is here the scientific authority, is very important. So it can be a vector, a vehicle of wrong ideas. At the same time, it can be a vehicle and a vector of good message and good ideas. And I would like to close with another important issue, which is diversity. Today, we live in a society that acknowledges and try to promote the idea of diversity, like democracy, like monogamy. It is very effortful for the human race to accept these concepts. It is against our biological urges, biological needs. We go against all this to build a society that is at the end monitored by what we call our cognitive processes. And these cognitive processes, for example, accepting the others, accepting the others, which means that I can accept their ideas, but also their way of dressing, their way of talking, everything. Today, it's very problematic to steer the diversity issue when we try to teach religion. Why? Because teaching religion, maybe it is a wrong statement. Teaching religion means at the end teaching one religion. You cannot find all the colors of the religion in one classroom. And that's why putting as priority the diversity maybe is a bigger message than putting a priority teaching one religion in the classroom. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. In order to close this first round of debate, I'm going to welcome Lord Andrew Adonis, former Education Minister of the United Kingdom. Lord Adonis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. If the microphone is working and you can hear me clearly. The sittings of the House of Commons and the House of Lords in the United Kingdom begin with prayers. And these prayers are remarkably well attended because there are not enough seats for all of the members who wish to participate in the debates. And the only way of being sure to get a seat is to turn up for prayers so that you can get a seat. Whether you believe or not, it doesn't matter. You then get a seat and you can be sure of being able to participate in the debates afterwards. So I'm delighted to see that you've all come here for what I assume is going to be the debate afterwards, which will give you an opportunity to participate in testing, in the role of science in schools, in teacher unions in schools, all those other issues which many people think are more important than religion, but actually, to my mind, are just as central. There's an argument of principle and an argument of practice in favour of allowing religions in schools. And indeed, Professor Mizuki accepted himself that the idea that you could ban religion from schools is as absurd as the idea that you could ban food from schools, or that you could ban any discussion of cultural practices from schools, or anything of that kind. Religion, and by religion I include versions of humanism and the big ideologies which are very religious in their content, in having a worldview and so on, are part of society. They're part of human life, they're part of our culture, they're part of our families. You cannot ban them from schools. The only issue is in what form you allow them to be present in schools. If you seek to ban them, then of course you end up with very big arguments about what should and shouldn't be taking place in schools, but you also have the effect of making these issues far more difficult and controversial to handle in society. You don't make them part of the curriculum. You don't foster open debate between religions, which is, to my mind, hugely important. And you don't cultivate those attributes of thinking, of debate, of discussion, of reflection, which are so important. To my mind, you shouldn't be seeking to narrow the religious content that you see in schools and in the classrooms, but to expand it, to see that young people are exposed to the full range of views on religion, that it shouldn't be narrow, it should be large. And whilst I myself went to a Christian school, and I should never forget, I mean, a very evangelical school, which wasn't great at teaching other religions. Indeed, I remember having a conversation with the chaplain once, and he was very much in two minds as to whether it was possible for a Catholic to be a Christian. I mean, these were sort of schools 20 years ago, and not always a wide range of views. But having these debates out in the open, seeking to bring them to the centre of the curriculum, to my mind, is far more important than keeping them out of schools and then seeking to foster much less debate, much less reflection, and much less engagement than you would have otherwise. Now, Professor Mizuki sought to draw a distinction, I thought, between teaching those things in schools which are objective and, as it were, scientific, and those things that are subjective, and I took him to mean cultural. And what the logical destination of his argument is that schools should be restricted to teaching those things which are factual, scientific, and can be proven. The dinosaurs, I think, probably come into that category. They were there. There are fossil remains. We can prove it. The idea that there weren't dinosaurs is as absurd as some of the ideas that are taught in some American schools, which don't believe that Charles Darwin was ever born and existed. And that, of course, does have a central part in schools too. But if you're going to take the view that those things that are cultural, that are subjective, that are not susceptible to conclusive proof, as Karl Popper said, they can't be falsified, if they have no place in schools, then it's not just religion that you have to draw the line at teaching in schools. There is literature, there is history, there is geography, actually. You see how geography and social organisation and human organisation are taught in schools. All of those will have no part too. The teaching of, in my country, there is no more difficult and vexed subject, and this is a country which doesn't have much in the way of cultural wars, than the teaching of history in schools. What is the appropriate content of the history curriculum? This is a hugely controversial subject. Should it be restricted to essentially to politics and the great political realm, or should we enlarge the realm of history? And what is right? What is a correct view of as a country, our colonial history, the treatment of women, the treatment of minorities of all kinds? All of these are deeply subjective issues. If you take them out of the classroom and out of schools, then you force that debate to take place in a way that doesn't involve young people being exposed, as they should do, with a well-run school and a well-organised curriculum, to a range of views, to an attempt at providing maximum, not minimal, information to the debates, and to a culture of tolerance and discussion, rather than a culture of intolerance and assertion. So, to my mind, religion should play a role in schools. It should be taught. All religions should be taught in schools. There should be, and they should be alongside those other big cultural areas of life in the role that they play. But a practical issue in conclusion. In a free society, it's not possible to ban the teaching of religion in schools, nor is it in fact possible in a free society to ban religious groups from sponsoring schools. In a free society, if you stop it taking place in the public education system, it simply takes place in the private education system. France, often heralded as a great example of secular education, in fact has a very large private education system which is Catholic. And the reason it is so large is in part because it's not possible to manage and run schools with a Catholic ethos inside the state system. As a practicing politician who has been responsible for managing an education system and who had to grapple with these issues of extremism and of intolerance on the part of many religious groups, including in their approach to the education system. So Mike Tomlinson, who's here, was talking about Birmingham and the problems we've had with the Islamic community in Birmingham and the management of schools. The issue, to my mind, is whether you force religious groups who want to sponsor schools to do it privately with little regulation, no attempt at getting balance and wide debate in the curriculum and bringing different communities together, or whether you seek to make it possible to do it and embed it within a state education system which reflects and makes provision for all of those big streams of cultural life in the community, but seeks to bring them together, not to pull them apart. By making it possible to have religious organisations sponsoring schools within a regulated framework of a modern curriculum, of requirements for tolerance, requirements for balance, and so on, then I believe it's possible to get the best of both worlds, to recognise the importance of religion as a cultural facet, but also to preach, breed, and cultivate tolerance, not intolerance, within our society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lord Adonis. Thanks a lot. Before we move on to the next part of the debate, I would like each and every one of you to applaud first for those who are against the motion, and then but wait, forget your beliefs. We just want to hear applaud as to the level of conviction or how convincing those who spoke were. So, for those who were against religion at school and for the motion, on my right, please a round of applause. For those who were against the motion but for religion at school, on my left, a round of applause, please. Thank you very much. So it is now time for me to wrap it up before we go to the final questions and argumentations. So if we look at how religion is perceived and conceived, it's very hard in any society around the world to have a structure of society that does not depend on religion. Depending on it, meaning that it opposes religious values or history or follows them. And one thing that we can't do is have an education system that would be religion independent. But then it is us who have to frame the question. As Lord Adonis mentioned, there are countries that claim to have a secular education that is public. However, in this secular education that is public, no meat is served on Fridays. People eat fish, yet it's a secular school. And no pork is served at school, yet it's claimed to be secular. And it shows that despite the claim and despite the Constitution, it is very, very hard to be religious and religion independent at school. So the first thing is to discuss, when we say no religion at school, are we talking about the absence and the ban of religious signs at school and display of religious beliefs? That's the first point. The second way to understand the question is to ask whether we're talking about having no teaching of religion, of one religion or several religions per se, when we claim that it is against religion and banning religion. So are we talking about the absence of religious people coming to teach and preach? And the third one is the hardest one. And that was also something that was brought up by Professor Marzuki and Lord Adonis, is the fact that it is impossible to ban religion. And religion maybe should be considered as part of a history curriculum, because when we look at the history of mankind, it is impossible to disentangle religion from the history of mankind. This, regardless your beliefs with respect to religion in general or a religion in particular. And I would like, for this final round of questions and debate, for our respective teams to stand up, join their microphones, and have a question that you would like to ask the other team, one question each, and then we would further the debate. And since you opened the session, this team is going to have the honor to ask the first question to the opposing team. Please join us in the middle.
Okay, go
What
with
do
the
you-
questions.
Shall I ask a first question?
Yeah.
Taking on from the summary which the Chair has just given us, is it your view that religion should be banned from schools in terms of teaching as well as in terms of practice? 'Cause
I
that
was
clearly is a
expecting this
fundamental issue.
question, but I didn't say that it has to be banned. I said that maybe it's not the right place to do it. And I think it's a bit confusing, your message to the audience, because you are, I'm not rejecting religion as a culture facet. This is true. This is some sort, we are all immersed in a religious settings, in a religious environment, but I'm not obliged to bring that up in my school. The school has to be a vector for other teaching and other type of knowledge. And the other confusing point in your message is that you're aligning up religion along with geography, literature, and history. What has to do with religion, all this? We have critical thinking in all these subfields. We have, students can learn controversy and can learn to write essays and to write critical thinking that has nothing to do with religion. So I think the message is a bit confusing, but you see, I don't reject religion as a true cultural fact. We are all impacted in a way in our daily life behavior by religion, daily. But this has nothing to do with the fact of bringing up religion or using school as a vector to sell or promote any religion belief, especially what's happening now. You see, we cannot control radicalization, we cannot control a lot of deviation coming from this kind of set of mind when we allow religion teaching.
Thank you, Professor Marzuki. I would like to extend that question. It is my understanding that you've worked in France and in the United States. In France, the president swears on the Constitution. In the United States, the president swears on the Bible. How would you give a history lesson in the United States without religion to explain why the president of the United States swears on the Bible if you remove religion from the curriculum of history, for example?
Yeah, this is a good example showing that.
I know it is a good example, otherwise I
No,
wouldn't have asked the question.
No, we are supposed to be in the same team, I remember.
Nope, they paid more.
He's a very impartial chair, I very
No, the thing is, this is a good example to show that people, for voting behavior or other, may be sensitive to this kind of message, but why we need to spare school from that? This is the thing. So we can acknowledge this in outside school because this is part of our culture, part of our way of communicating with each other, but we don't have to use school for that. School, I have maybe an idealistic representation of school, but it has to be a vector for a good knowledge.
Thank you very much for this non-answer to my question. You're ready to run politics. Your time to ask a question, please.
For me?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, yes. My question really is about the place. When I made my argument, I thought of it in regards to, not that we are not teaching about religion. If we have our children going to places where they learn about our diverse population, of course they have to learn about religion. And as I said, through history and humanities, and that there are practices that are embedded in our lives and what we do. But the way I interpreted this debate is a question of where should the prayer be? And I do not believe that it should be happening in school. My question for you is, where should the prayer be, given your beliefs?
Okay. I believe that school is actually a part of the bigger society. So you have children expressing their faith within their family context, and you have their religious institutions like their temples or churches. But a school is an interconnected institution with these other institutions. And I do believe that these spaces as well should be an extension where children can actually express their faith. I mean, it's hard to actually prevent children from saying that this is your faith from your family and from your temple, and then when they go to school, they're not supposed to bring that faith within. It's part of their whole life. It's part of their culture. And cutting the opportunity to bring this identity in the school setting will actually, for me, cut the ability of every child to apply these things in other contexts. So it's actually bringing this holistic development in different contexts where they are, that including the school institutions.
My turn to ask you a question as well. Your argument being that it is very hard not to bring some of one's personal beliefs and what they are into school. But isn't the role of school also to bring something different to people? The fact that in many schools you have to dress differently than the way you dress at home, and people are making an effort to dress differently, to speak differently, to behave differently from what they would be doing at home. So why wouldn't it be the case for religion in that case?
Well, that's what I was saying a while ago, that when we talk about religious practices, it's not about a requirement. It's not something that children have to do. You have to do this ritual, you have to do these prayers if this school is a religious school. Again, in my own experience, children, and from my experience, we were given the opportunity to actually say no and have our own space to express our beliefs. So that's what I'm saying, is that it's also the responsibility of the school to actually respect children's faith in their own context and not forcing them to do these things that are actually against to their perspective.
Building on this, I've got a question for both teams, and you will be answering first and then second, since we started this way. Wouldn't you think that at a time where the religious questions are very, very sensitive, to say the least, and create a lot of controversy in the media, in the private discussion, that teaching about the essence of the main religions, and when I say main, I'm speaking in terms of number of people that are believing, teaching about the fundamentals might help people understand each other better, or at least not have some false ideas on what people are doing at home without them knowing, claiming that, oh, this religion, when they are together, they do this, or that one do that. Isn't it the role of school also to prepare the kids to evolve in the society later? The society, whether people like it or not, is getting more and more religious, and by religious at the broadest sense. We're talking from beliefs to discussions. And isn't it the time to think about a way school should prepare kids to face religion? And by facing religion, I'm talking people from different beliefs, discussions, and the evolution of geopolitics with the rise and the big comeback of faith nowadays.
Yes, is the answer. I entirely agree with that. In England now, it's increasingly common for religions which are not well understood by many parts of society because they haven't been part of the dominant cultural heritage of the country, so the non-Christian religions, for their synagogues, their temples, their mosques, to have open days, to open themselves to the public, to welcome in school children so that they can see the practices that take place in them, and to make them outward-looking institutions, not just inward-looking institutions. To my mind, there is nothing that is more likely to breed tolerance and a stronger sense of cohesion in society than that our main religious groups should be outward-looking, not inward-looking, and there is nowhere that it matters more that they're outward-looking than when it comes to young people, and where are young people most organised when it comes to learning and subjecting themselves to experiences and so on. It's partly in the family and it's partly in school. Now, by the nature of the family, since families tend to be of one religion, I mean, there are exceptions, but they do tend to be one religion, the family isn't always a great way of being exposed to other religions within the community as a whole, just as it may not be a great way of learning about physics if you don't have a mother or a father who's a physicist, or having a debate about history or literature. And the idea, by the way, that the literature is not a controversial and cultural issue is, of course, as anyone knows who's tried to teach the appreciation of poetry, is, of course, a controversial proposition itself. It's at least as controversial as the study of religion, and just a subject to people who want to bring critical thinking and so on to bear. Okay. It's important that our religious institutions are outward-looking, and nowhere should that be more important than that they're outward-looking to school children, and that schools play a crucial role as part of their educating mission in exposing young people to the full range within their society of religious practices so that they become accepted, understood, not alien, and something of which they're afraid.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so how would you accept, how you address the issue of diversity? Which kind of religion you're going to teach when you have a classroom full of different children coming from different religious belief system? Because this is the issue, actually. You're not acknowledging the diversity of the society has nothing to do with what's happening really in the classroom. This is what you're doing is acknowledging that the society is diverse. This is good. This is what should happen. But how to address the diversity now? By imposing one color of the religious teaching.
Oh, the point was absolutely not one color. Yeah. Is to be able to introduce the kids to the fundamentals of each religion, the same way that in physics you would have quantum physics or relative physics.
This is my question, how to do it? I don't see how to address the question objectively. You have to make a statistics each year, and depending, for example, you have 80% of Catholic group or 20% of other group, you have to also adjust the hours of teaching accordingly. How to do it?
No, wait. I think I finally found why they brought the brain scientist in the debate. So, there is one thing we learned from brain science is that objectivity doesn't exist. So I think we can get rid of, in an objective way, etc. Everything is subjective. Starting by yours truly. This said, so would you have something else but objectivity to throw in the debate?
Not the objectivity, because he brought up the practice and he brought up the teaching. They are different for me.
Hey?
They are different. Practice is not teaching. So, and how to combine both in one classroom system. So this is my question.
It is fantastic that you agree to disagree, because this part comes to an end. And I would ask you to go back to your seats, and while you get overall a very warm round of applause. We're going to take one question from the floor from you. You raise your hand first, and I thought it is for a great question, I'm sure. Can we have a microphone, please? Not you asking the question, the lady, please. She raised her hand first. Okay, comment, but...
Okay, the one question I have to ask, I'll ask a question, just to be fair. The question is, how do you deal with kids who come to school with religion regardless? It can be a secular school. We'll say in New Jersey, we have a school where students are Muslims, Jews, Christians, and everything else. How do you accommodate those practices? Because when a Muslim comes to school, say a girl comes to school with hijab, do you not let her in?
Of course she comes in. And of course, all those different faiths are acknowledged. If there's prayer that has to happen because it's commanded by a faith, then yes, the administration should allow for that. It's like allowing, but to have prayer with all those different faiths every day in a public school, I don't think that fits. I think that we are agreeing in many ways that tolerance, diversity, types of religion, religion and history has to be learned by all of the students. But
That's good, but I don't think every religion requires everyone to pray every day, all day. We say Islam, yes, 5 times a day. But if you go to synagogue, it will be on Saturday. If you go to church, it will be on Sunday. So that's out of school days. Maybe just to teach basics. Also depending on the community. Because, for example, if you live, like I'll say for myself, when I lived in New Jersey, we had lots of Jews in our city, so we got Yom Kippur and those days off. We are not Jews, but we get the benefit. So we cannot say, get rid of it. It's a day off of school.
We're back. I've been hard enough on Professor Marzuki then to bring to go with him on that one. He raised the question of practicality and logistics on that, and this is typically an example. And again, to go back to a very secular system in France, I think the very secular teachers and the very secular politicians in France are happy to go on holiday for Christmas. So, do we have time for one more? One more. We're going to go on this side. The lady in white. Would have loved to say the lady in red in reference to a song, but unfortunately.
Hello, my name is Debbie Dowling from Hult International Business School in Dubai. Just wanted to say thank you for your very engaging arguments. My question is building on from Professor Mizuki's question, which is who should be teaching religion to these students? From a person who grew up in a homogenous Catholic Irish school to then go on to teach religion in a cross-curricular London school. Who should be teaching these students religion? What is the criteria that you would expect from a religion teacher?
Well, exactly. That's why I don't believe that we can find the best fit to the. I mean, who will be teaching religion? And this is a big issue. I mean, compared to other discipline that taught in school, for example, we can have textbook. We can have a very clear criteria on how to deliver the message to the students. The problem is who will be the teacher? What's the best profile for the teacher? And this is problematic because we cannot control for that. And if we're gonna say no, in order to prevent some sort of, I don't know, abnormal behaviors regarding extremism or regarding radicalism or whatever misconduct regarding this question, I think it will be also another way to coerce the freedom of the teacher and you want to say something?
Yeah, no,
oh,
wait,
okay.
no, we are going to. Thank you very much, Lord Adonis, for a quick rebuttal, and each team will express their final argument.
The ideal teacher of religion will be somebody who has a brilliant grasp of the history of every religion, who has visited religious institutions of all kinds, who is an expert in the teaching and the debating of ethics, and who brings a balance and objectivity to them all. So probably it's better if they don't actually believe any of them, because this makes it much easier for them to be able to set out all of them. Alas, these paragons don't exist in anywhere beyond utopia, so we have to do the best we can by training teachers, by having a curriculum, by doing all of those things that we do in other subjects. But let me let you into a secret. One of the biggest shortages that we have in the United Kingdom of teachers is people with decent maths qualifications. But the fact that we don't have good enough maths teachers in our schools has not yet led us to think that we should ban the teaching of maths. And I think the same is true of religion.
Thank you very much. So each team is preparing for a final argument. In the meantime, the question that one could ask, and I'm just throwing this one for discussion afterwards while they prepare, is, do you really need a religious person to teach religion?
This is my question.
No, this is mine. All right? Do you need, can't we consider religion as a social factor, a factor of society that can be taught like anything else? And it doesn't take a religious person to teach the fundamentals of respect, morals, and reciprocity and empathy. Now, in a less elegant way, we can say that the person who trained Mike Tyson never knocked out Mike Tyson. The person who trained Sergei Bubka never jumped over 6 meters, yet they were very good in teaching something. So it doesn't take a religious person to teach religion at school. And maybe the solution, in order to avoid one of the most sensitive topics nowadays, and we all know that in sitting here, and I'm saying this really wholeheartedly, it is one of the hardest topics to address publicly, because we know that if we go against, if we have a serious argument that is associated as an argument against a religion, there are chances that some mental short circuits will bring that the person is racist, anti-Semitic, anti-everything, anti-Muslim, etc., just because a fact is brought up. It's one of the hardest things to discuss. And for that, I am applauding our panelists, because it's been wonderful the way you presented it. But I expect even better for your final arguments.
Okay.
For your final way before we vote.
Okay. I think one of the important things we'd like to emphasize from this side is that we take the time out to listen to the voices of the children who are directly affected by the issue. I'm one of these young persons who experience the positive impact of religious practices in schools, and that's one thing that we have to consider. I think the main argument from this side is about the capacity of teachers to work with these religious subjects, and we strongly suggest it all boils down to the training program from pre-service education to prepare these teachers so that they have the capacity to respond to this context. Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been really hard. I think in the end, the essence of what we brought here to argue is that it is the practice. Where are the religious practices taking place? And it has to be regarded whether it is in the school or not. I think both sides agree that there has to be the teaching of religion, of the history, of what the practices are, but not to require that there is practice of religion in school. That being said, complete respect of all of the differences.
Thank you very much. Before your final vote, we're going to display the results of the initial vote. So I'm now handing it over to our friends here. It's, those who agree with the motion that it should be banned at the very beginning of a session were 52%. And those from my left who disagree with the motion, 48%. It is now time for a final vote. So please take your clickers, your little remotes, and we're going to wait for the countdown of 10 seconds for the final vote to occur. Again, if you would agree with a motion, and again, agreeing means being against religion at school, you click 1. If you disagree, meaning that you're for religion at school, you click 2. You got 10 seconds. It seems that those who agree have won, at least the audience. As to the main question, I will end up, no? Agree? 57? Oh, no, no, sorry, I don't see. So disagree. I'm sorry, from here I can't see. So disagree won. Disagree won. I'm very sorry. Disagree won. You've been efficient. So, no, all right, of course, you would expect someone from science to bring some technical issue to the vote. Speaking of statistical significance, all right. As to the main question, I will end up with quoting Brian Wilson, God only knows. Thank you very much.